So look at you.
Welcome, veterans. This is Dennis Young with the Veterans Memorial Park and Digital Library. We are here day 4 of the 123rd National VFW Convention. And we are here with John. John is the
General Counsel.
General Counsel for the National VFW. He was actually here once already. Something happened to his interview, and we've asked him to come back, and he has returned. John, can you spell your last name again, please?
Muckwlbauer.
All right, John. Thank you so much. So, we're going to just go back a little bit. Tell us about, like, where you grew up, and where you went to school, your parents and things, and, like, what got you to join the military.
So, yeah, I grew up around the Annapolis, Maryland area. Born and raised there. And went through high school, realized that I was it seemed like I barely graduated high school and did not want to pursue any further education. So ended up joining the Marine Corps. Spent about 10 years in active and with the reserve unit, and deployed to Desert Storm with light armored reconnaissance unit. Went over and did that, fought in Desert Storm with that unit. Came home. Heck, I finished up school and got to work. So, and then worked for a few years, and then decided to go to law school after that.
All right, law school. And then you, I'm assuming you practiced law then? You worked for a firm?
I did. Right after law school, I worked for a firm in Georgetown for a little over a year. And just working as one of those just huge firms that just did a lot of work, a lot of different work. We worked with in the telecommunications industry at the time. We did. I worked on a antitrust case, which sounds exciting, but we ended up going and our client was in the dairy industry, and they were the largest dairy producer and distributor in the world. They were buying the second largest, and it was just a merger. DOJ intervened, and we had to do what they call due diligence, where you actually go around to dairies all over the country and just rummage through their files, try to find any evidence of any kind of unfair practices for the DOJ to evaluate. So anyway, did that, and I was on the road all the time, and got a call after that concluded. Got a call from somebody that I had worked with. He had just been nominated to take over an agency in the Department of Labor, nominated by President Bush, 43, asked me to be on his team. So I went over and worked in the administration at the Department of Labor for a while, and assisted in an agency called Veterans Employment and Training Service. Worked as his chief of staff, and then stayed on with them, went through the 2 terms with the administration, stayed on with labor for a little while longer in a different career position as a senior investigator for that same agency, and then ended up having lunch one day with some folks that I had worked with at the VFW before. This was before law school, and during the lunch I realized it was kind of an interview, so I just ended up, they asked me to come back to the VFW as their general counsel. They needed a lawyer. I was a lawyer. I had familiarity with the organization, an affinity for it. It was a good fit. So I started about 10 years ago now with
That's
VFW
outstanding.
in this capacity.
Were you a member of VFW prior to that meeting with them?
Not only was I a member, I was an employee. I had worked as a service officer right out of college, before law school. That was the job I had then. I worked, it was the first job I had out of college. I worked as a service officer in Washington, Dc. And working with individual veterans and their families to navigate the VA claims process with them. It was a pretty rewarding job. Really enjoyed it. Did that. I did some military claims work dealing with discharge upgrades and actions before the boards of correction of military records. That process, actually representing individual veterans, those who are eligible for discharge upgrades, they go before an actual military board, and I was their representative there. And it was one of the things that just kind of motivated me to pursue a legal career, because I was essentially doing that. I was representing individuals before a judicial panel, and it seemed to be, I really enjoyed it. I'll just put it that way.
It's kind of like your niche.
It was a good fit. Yeah, absolutely.
Good fit. What post are you assigned to? Are you
3712 in Paola, Kansas.
That's your post?
That's
Paola,
my post.
Kansas.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And you live in Kansas?
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
I live. It's about 45, 50 minutes south of here.
Oh, wow. And I didn't realize from the other day when we talked.
We work, and our headquarters is in Kansas City. In VFW
Right, yeah,
headquarters
National is Kansas City, yep.
So,
that's-
I work there and live about 45 minutes south of there.
That's outstanding. So, we have our new commander coming on board here. And then, so kind of like, what do you do as a general counsel for the VFW besides keep them out of trouble?
Yeah, it's a couple of fronts that I try to address for them. One is defending any lawsuits that arise at, from the post department or any activities that occur. The national organization could be named in a lawsuit, in which case I'll have to coordinate our defense on that. That's a small percentage of the things that I do. It keeps us busy, but more than that, it's on the proactive side, and that is to put things in place to prevent those types of issues from ever coming up to the extent possible.
So are you talking like our bylaws and things like that? You
So I
help
work-
generate those and make those work for us?
Work with our bylaws, work with the team that handles those, certainly give it legal scrutiny to make sure that it's in compliance with everything else, our federal charter, and the originating documents, make sure they're consistent with other bylaws. I'm a part of that process, but really all their other just general corporate practice things. There's contracts that constantly need to be drafted or reviewed. We do, in a given year, about 200 contracts.
Are these like contracts for vendors and things like that, or just contracts generalized for?
Contracts for vendors, contracts for events, contracts for any sort of sponsorship or royalty arrangement that we have with any entity out there. Any kind of memorandum of understanding that we're going to have with another third party to do any kind of event. All of that should be reduced in writing, and I will usually draft or review those materials.
And make sure it's right.
Make sure it's right. Make sure that that we're covered from a legal standpoint. A couple of years ago, probably 5 years ago, we were dealing with events. I started putting in here's a provision in contracts called force majeure. It's a big event basically, and it allows for cancellation for the contracts if certain events occur. So about 5 years ago, I started putting into our contracts that we can cancel without penalty for any kind of public health emergency. And I don't know why I started doing it. Probably I just saw something that seemed like a good idea, and I try to make sure that we try to be as broad and all-inclusive as we can if we need to get out of something. Of course, the other party is thinking, what's going to happen? What kind of public health emergency is possibly going to arise that'll keep
5 years ago, you probably would have never thought.
Keep us from having you pay the bill. Well, and then COVID hit, and we were able to get out of, this is the first full convention that we've had in a couple of years, but it was about 2 years where we had to do a lot of cancellation of contracts. Didn't cost us a dime. There was no penalty fees, nothing. So it positioned the organization pretty well to is try to anticipate things that could possibly happen downrange, and you contract for that.
All right. Okay. Good. Good. Very, very interesting to me. What have you ever held any other positions in any VFW post or anything like that, as a commander or anything like that?
No. I mean, really, I've been really strictly focused on the career side, and I mean, I work with post and positions at all levels within the post. When I go to post meetings, it's a little different environment for me. When I go to the post meetings, they sort of tend to look to me to answer questions, and I just want them to be able to answer it, and not really feel like I'm coming in to take over anything. I love being a member of my post. I love just letting the process work and letting them know that I'm not there to interfere. I'm a member. I'm just a part of the overall thing, and not really needing to take a position from anybody else. Now, if they needed somebody, I'm there for them. But right now we've got coverage on everything that we need.
Good, and that's what I was getting ready to ask you. And you answered. I was going to ask you, do you work with local posts across the United States?
I get calls all the time from them. Love talking. I mean, it's a drop everything and answer the call when a post calls. And I can't give them legal representation, but I will give them some practical advice on what they can do and how to seek representation if they need it. But a lot of times, just some practical sort of information to help steer them in the right direction is all they need. And that's on a number of things: liability issues, often tax and state compliance issues that come up.
Cool. All right, so I love that. Now, here's what I want to hear again. The other day when you was in here, you told us something that's near and dear to your heart.
Sure.
You actually carry this medallion with you all the time. You've had it with you since it was given to you. I know it means a lot to you.
Yeah.
I saw that it choked you up a little bit. I love the story. It choked me up as well. I would love to have our viewers hear that again. And the reason why, because that's what we do. We help veterans. Yeah. And to me, the story you told the other day was exactly what we do. And I would love our viewers to hear that. If you do not mind to say it again.
Thanks for the opportunity. So as I mentioned, I was a service officer in Washington, D.C., and really enjoyed that job, my first job with the VFW. Washington, D.C., the VA regional office at the time, there was this little courtyard that you'd have to walk through to get into the building. And I noticed several days there was an individual sitting out in the courtyard. It was usually pretty cold, but he was just sitting there. No one was approaching him. People were, in fact, going out of their way to avoid him. He just, looked like a pretty rugged individual, pretty tough. But after a couple days, I just kept seeing him there, and I can't even. I think somehow I just looked at him. We made eye contact, and I said, I just got to talk to this guy. Went over, and I felt like, okay, I'm a Marine. What are you going to do to me? So, sort of bulletproof. So I went over and talked to him, introduced myself, found out that his name was Dave. I said, hey Dave, I'm John. Found out he was a Marine. I said, Dave, I'm a Marine too. And found out he actually served with 9th Marines in Vietnam. Well, I served with 9th Marines, not in Vietnam, but I was with 9th Marines for a while as well in the Corps. We seemed to be having a lot in common, and they seemed to have that common denominator. I asked him if we could help him, and he basically said, no, there's nobody that can help me. They've already tried, and nobody can help me. I was like, well, Dave, maybe the case. I'm willing to give it a shot if you are. It took some convincing. Eventually, I got him in my office. We sat down. Got his power of attorney filed with the organization, got his case file, looked through it, examined it, as a service officer will do, You look for any kind of issues, look for what his current rating is. Well, he was currently rated something at like 0% for an unspecified psychiatric condition, going back years. Like, and I was thinking immediately, well, it's not unspecified. We know exactly what it is. And I worked with him. We filed a claim for an increase evaluation for PTSD and for some other issues that he had associated with that and with his condition and with his service. He was a decorated Marine in Vietnam, so he had some issues, some other things that had occurred. Sometimes can be a very long process with the VA, but I was able to really push it through as quickly as I can, and we were able to find instances where he had been seen and treated at the VA hospital for the same condition. And anyway, I eventually got his rating back from the VA after a few months, and they awarded him a retroactive check from like several years back to 30%, and then 30% to 100% from when we filed. So he had a couple of years of 30%, and then it was increased incrementally. Anyway, at the end of it, he was receiving 100% service connection. He had a 6-figure retroactive check. And I thought, well, good for Dave. That this seems like that'll mean something to him, and hopefully he'll be able to change his life a little bit. Maybe he won't. You just never know. Signed off on it. Thought, they'll send him his check. Everything will be good. At least I hoped the best for him, and wished him well in my head. About 2 months after that, a guy walks into my office. He asked for me. Sat down kind of where you are, and asked how I've been, like we had met before. And I looked over at him. I didn't recognize him. And then he started talking to me, and I realized, it's Dave. I said, Dave, man, you look great. He had cleaned up, he had shaved, he had, just a totally different looking individual. It was like 10 years was just lifted off his life. And he'd really cleaned himself up, dried out completely, and was on the right track. Dave said, look, John, I was homeless a long time. He said I had lost everything. He said I lost my job, I lost my friends, I lost my family. I lost everything. And then Dave said there was one thing that I held on to throughout all my years of being homeless. And he reaches into his pocket. And this is what he pulled out. He pulls out this medallion, this little Marine Corps emblem. You can see it's tarnished, it's bent up, it's peeled off of a plaque. But this was the thing that he held on to. He slid it across the table. He said, this was the thing that kept me grounded. Meant everything to me. And he said, I want you to have this. I want you to have this because you're the reason why I'm in the right track now, and I'm in a better spot. And and he thanked me. He said he just couldn't thank me enough. But so Dave leaves, and it took me a little while to realize that while Dave thanked me, that it was me who needed to thank him, because what this medallion represents is purpose. This medallion represents the fact that it's our role in life to help people, and that it's so much more than just our individual efforts, that we can be part of something bigger than ourselves. and it's just an amazing feeling to be able to give something like that to a worthy comrade like Dave, or anybody out there. It gives us complete direction and purpose in life. And yeah, it's been 30 years or so almost that I've had this, and I keep it with me every day, and I look at it and I think, you know, today I'll try to help somebody.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I could tell it still means a lot too.
Every day. Yeah,
every day.
Yeah.
Do you know how Dave is doing today still?
No, we've lost. I moved, lost track, but I can tell you this. I mean, he did say that he had reconnected with his family, and just things are on an upward trajectory for him. So everything.
That's amazing.
It is amazing.
And that's what we do for veterans.
That's why we're here.
All right. John, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming back and telling that story again, because I know it means a lot to you. I know it's hard. Thank you.
Oh, it's good to tell. Absolutely.